You're listening to Operation Self Reset with Jake Naraki. Today is June 16th, 2013, and it's Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to not only my dad, but to all the dads listening to this podcast. Hey guys, and welcome back to Operation Self Reset. Today is Father's Day, and I figured, you know what? Instead of giving my dad some goofy grilling outfit or some crazy tool, gadget thingamajigger, I thought, why not bring him on the podcast and let him preach what he has been preaching to myself, our family, our friends, our relatives, and to even random people on the street about just loving life, kicking butt, and just staying positive day in and day out. It's a long interview, so I just want to get right to it. Hey guys, and today we have a Father's Day special coming to you live from my studio here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The one and only Greg Naraki, my father, aka Dad. Never really got comfortable calling you father or dad. I don't know where that came from. Maybe it was just because you never really listened to dad, so I started calling you by your first name. But welcome, and what do you think about this podcasting and or you holding a microphone and looking at the screen?
Well, it's always enjoyable to be with my son, and especially now that he's venturing out into a new facet of his life. So I'm happy to be here, and hopefully we can give people their money's worth.
Perfect. Yeah, that's my father, always talking about money. So there you go. So, Dad, let's talk about, I guess, a little background. Give everybody out there listening a little bit of your personal history. And I know, you're old, so this might be a long history lesson. So make it kind of quick, but tell us where you began.
Well, I'm 66 years young as of May 31st of this year. Born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And as a young kid, we were fortunate to be in a facility where we had a lot of room to run. And our backyard was an open field, and we had a lot of adventures and interesting friends and a lot of BB gun fights, apple fights, hiking through the fields, chasing rabbits, enjoying life. And I had great parents, my dad and mom. My dad was a Marine during World War II, married my mother. I was born in 1947. And we moved out there and started a family. I have a sister and another brother. And I guess I just started out having fun and realized that I could make money picking up soda water bottles at that time. Back in the 40s and 50s, that was the thing. So I started collecting those bottles and turned that into some spending money. Then as I grew older, wanted to make some more money, and some guy down the street offered me a job at a farm picking beans by hand, 50 cents a bushel, not just a flat bushel, a heaping bushel. So that was a lot of breaking work for 50 cents a bushel, but it was enjoyable. Got out to see a lot of things and learn something about the farm, and then had an opportunity to sell Christmas cards as I was growing up. Then got into being a newspaper boy, delivering newspapers for quite some time, even into high school, and got into high school and still liked making money. So I went and started working in a, not a fast food restaurant, but a, like a 7-Eleven store. It's called Dutchland Dairies in Milwaukee. Got into high school and then started selling clothes to make some more money and working in another place, washing windows, washing floors, you name it. Joined the Marine Corps back in 1966. Went to Vietnam for a couple of tours. Still enjoy traveling. I'm very lucky to be back here. Have 3 great kids, quite a few grandkids, great in-laws, great son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws. So I'm very fortunate. And when I got out of the Marine Corps, I didn't know what I was going to do. And so one of the gentlemen that I used to go to high school with, his father was a policeman. And he said, "Greg, did you ever think about being a policeman on the Milwaukee Police Department?" I said, "No, it never crossed my mind." He said, "Well, why don't you go out and see if you can make it?" So at that time, I think this was like early 70s, I filled out the application. And then he said, "Why don't you also try out for the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department?" I said, "That's great. I'll try both." So I put my applications into both. I still remember probably late 70 or 71, we had the test. I was able to pass that. There were 4,000 men who took that test back in 1970 or 71. And I think I passed, and I was number 30 out of all those people. And then I was in the training class of the police department when I was approached by the sheriff's department. So I had a chance to do either one of those things, and I think I placed number 2 out of 2,000 people for the sheriff's department, and decided to stay with the police department. But as I got on the police department, I just was thinking, I don't know. At that time, I was only making $12,000 a year. $12,000 a year. That's less than about $1,000 a month. And I knew that I could not be able to support a family on that type of money. So I was looking for ways to make more income. I went back to college, and my economics teacher stated one January, February, I think it was maybe 73 or 74, anybody wants to have their taxes done, I do taxes on the side. So I approached him after class, and he accepted my money to do my taxes. And when I went to pick him up, he says, Greg, you're paying a lot of money in taxes. I said, well, isn't that the American way? And he says, well, it is for some people, but I can show you how to pay less in taxes. And he told me to see one of his friends from, I think it was called Milwaukee Investment Realty. So didn't know the first thing about real estate. Didn't my father and grandparents and none of the people that I knew were in real estate, but I thought I'd take a chance. And I went and spoke with this gentleman. We looked at a couple of properties, and he said, I can show you all these properties, but what you got to basically do is take a chance on it. Well, I was still unsure about it, but everything happens for a reason. And during the tenure that I was trying to get into the real estate game, one of these classes came to town, learn all about real estate in, a weekend. And so I joined up for the class. I think it was about $200 that time for the whole weekend of Friday night, Saturday, and all day Sunday. Well, taking the class, I was really interested in it. And we ended on a Saturday note. We ended Sunday. And at the conclusion of this class, the gentleman who was running it just said, I want you folks to realize that I think there were 250 people in this class. Out of you 250 people, half of you right away, once you leave here, say, this is not for me. Then half of you out of that 250, which is 125, will still not be sure, and you'd have to ask somebody. But he said, in the long run, maybe out of all you people, 2 or 3 you people will actually get into real estate, buy something, and continue and become very successful. Well, I thought of that, and I thought, well, that seems quite strange. But as I've been in real estate now since about 1974, that's come true because, and I think one of the big factors, too, when you get into real estate or anything, you have to have a mentor. And when you find a mentor, you stay with him and you ask him all these questions. And if he's a good person, like the mentor that I had when I first started in real estate, he had to meet people that would give me a good roof deal, steel, windows, so forth and so on. But I also felt that if you get into real estate or anything, I think you have to start from the bottom, work your way through, learn all the different angles of real estate or owning a fast food restaurant or a gas station or a mom and pop cigarette store, whatever you want to get into, or a liquor store. Work from the bottom up. And I didn't know the first thing about changing a toilet, changing a faucet, electrical. But at that time, Reader's Digest had a large book that I can't recall the name of it, but home improvement. And they had pictures on how to change a toilet, how to drop a electrical line, plumbing, carpeting, tile work. And once you do that, and once you go through this thing of doing the repair work yourself, no one can take advantage of you because you know what it takes to change a toilet or put a wall up or drywall or tile work. So you become quite fluent in that. And as you become larger and larger in whatever you do, whether it's real estate, you became more proficient in it and no one can take advantage of you. And I think the biggest thing too is no one manages your money better than you do. And you've got to find a good accountant, a good attorney, and trust these guys, but yet you do all the book work. And then you can see where your money's going, who's it going out to, and always write the checks. Because as you know, probably from all your experiences from around the world, I think this is going to go through the world, there are a lot of people that take advantage of us. And you can't let them take advantage of you because it's more beneficial for you guys, or you ladies too, to do the work yourself, write the checks yourself, and talk to a lot of people. And as you become proficient in this game, whatever game it is, You become confident. You start helping other people, but still there's a lot of people that you can talk to and guide, and they still don't know what's going on, and you tell them about it. They'll ask you 3 or 4 times. And now, almost 40 years later, I see these people that asked me 25, 30 years ago, Greg, I should have stayed in real estate. And don't forget, folks, real estate is like any investment. It's not easy, because even in that class that I took, they always tell you, oh, yeah, you buy the building, you put your key in, you turn the key, people come in, they pay the rent, blah, blah, blah. Well, they don't tell you about the bad things where the tenants start a fire, or they bring the dogs and cats that destroy the place, or the girlfriends or boyfriends.
Or the guy running down the hallway with the ketchup.
Yeah, that's another story. And then, here's the other thing, that you're going to find some deceased people, where people say, gee, Greg, I haven't seen Frankie in a while. And all of a sudden, but it smells from his apartment. Well, you knock on the door, you go in, he's dead or she's dead. And that's part of it.
All right. Because when Dad gets on the death subject, it starts getting all emotional, and, you got to live for the moment. So I want to hold you on that note for a second. But let's talk about that first step of, when you came out of the military and focusing on your goal of becoming a police officer, being number 2 on a list of, what do you say, 1,400 people? Or
the fire department the sheriff's department was 2,500, but the police department was like 4,000. I think I was number 20.
Okay, sure. But how did you, I guess, dedicate yourself and realize that this is the path that you wanted to take at that moment?
Well, I guess I needed a job, and I wanted to be the best candidate. So I worked out, talked to a lot of police officers that were on the job, and talked to my buddy's father, and he directed me into what I should do. Found out you had to do the physical agility test. They give you a list of what you have to memorize, places, things, situations, and just was fortunate that I was in the right place at the right time, and must have had a great guardian angel. And I was one of the lucky guys to come out of Vietnam without too many injuries. And there's a lot of guys that have not had this opportunity. Yeah.
Now, being a police officer is a very respectable job. I mean, kind of decent wages at that time. Obviously, you did not feel you were paid sufficient enough, and you craved more because you felt you couldn't raise a family on $12,000 a year. Where did that come from? Where did the drive to say to yourself, I want more in life, I want more money so I'm able to have my wife stay at home, or to raise successful kids and have a decent living? Where did that come from, and how did you find it?
Well, as you talk to people in various walks of life, you ask the mentor. And I asked this gentleman that was my mentor, and he's still my mentor. And he said, well, I started by reading, I think the book was called Think and Grow Rich by
Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon Hill, right, correct. And I guess I started out in that, and I still remember the one thing that he said: if you have a goal in mind, if you want to buy a house that looks like a mansion, get that picture and you put it on your wall, and you look at it every day. Or when you get up in the morning, thank whoever you believe in that you're alive, and you can keep on thinking positive thoughts, write things down, present yourself in a positive manner, and don't listen to all the people say, you're goofy for getting into real estate, or what do you want to be a policeman for? Well, I enjoyed it, and I still enjoyed it, but it's that after a while you realize that you don't make a lot of money working for somebody else. And if you have a talent, whether it's real estate, laying concrete, asphalt, and you can do that on the side and still have a nice cushion of a job, now I should say cushion of a job, but a nice job that pays a good salary, and on your off days, working for it, and also reading various books, talking to various people. When I was on the force, we'd walk into a lot of doctors or attorneys, and I'd speak with them on the side. And if anybody I saw that had a business, how did you start? Talking to a guy that ran his, hardware store. He started out by himself. And it's a very interesting thing to keep on talking to people. Don't be afraid to ask things, because people are willing to give you information. And if you keep on thanking them and being appreciative of what they have to offer you, you're going to succeed.
Yeah. Where did that get instilled in you? Through your parents, grandma and grandpa? Or did you just learn that throughout, your events that led up to the current spot where you're at?
Well, my mother and father were very cautious people. They would think about things, and by the time they thought about things, those things passed them. And I think as I saw that, I say, gee, why didn't you do this and do that? And well, we're still thinking about it. But I was the of the other thing of that. Let's take a chance. So it's okay to fail. There's nothing wrong with failing. I mean, that's why within baseball, you don't see a 500, average hitter per year because it's pretty tough to watch that fastball coming out of that pitcher's hand and hit it out of the park. And same thing with real estate. You're never going to have 100 things go right. There's always going to be some difficulties in life, but you just got to face them, realize that I'm not the Lone Ranger. I can do it myself, and we'll go from here. And
what about when you took that step to buy that real estate property, your first one? You bought it with your dad, correct? Was that your first one?
No,
Oh, okay.
I bought it with just my own money from what Mom and I, your mother and I saved, and we started with a 10-family small little unit, and back in the 70s, and I think I must have bought it for about $45,000. But that time, that was a lot of money. But now I've sold that years ago, and recently I checked the tax roll with the city of Milwaukee, and that's almost $600,000 now. Now people say, you were goofy for doing it, but yet I turned that building to another building and bought successful buildings, and that's where I'm at today.
Taking the risk on the first one, were you confident in the decision? Did you feel you were doing the right thing, or were you like, this is what I studied, this is what I know? You already did the background checks on it. You understood the climate of the real estate like kind of notion. So you felt good going in, or were you nervous? And if you were, how did you overcome those feelings, and what proceeded after that?
Of course, I was nervous, especially when you're signing your life away. You don't know what's going on. You don't know how people react. And even though you had the course, like I said, they don't tell you about people skipping out, and you take over a place and two guys leave right away. Am I ever going to get this rented? And here I'm doing the painting myself, working a full job and coming home and going out, by 10 o'clock in the morning, working there a couple hours and going back to work and on my off days to make it a successful business. And it took you about 6 to 8 months to really feel confident in that you can make it in this place, because it's very simple. If you give people a nice place to live and they enjoy it and they pay you good money and you give them good service, they'll stick around. But if you just take from the place, because you have to put money back into the place to make it go. People don't realize that, toilets are going to break, pipes are going to break, roofs are going to leak, windows are going to be broken. I mean, it's not just an easy thing to put that key in the door when you buy it and say, wow, this is what I have. And it's a very enjoyable project for myself or anybody, but that's what I do. Other people like, buying roofing companies or laying asphalt. That's up to them, and that's great. But I just had a knack for it, and I was feeling pretty good myself.
At that time, were you into the positive, attitude and everything like that?
Oh, yes, you have to be. I mean, even when, someone breaks a window or the toilet breaks or a guy leaves a pan on the stove and he walks outside and next thing you know, the whole place is full of smoke. You have to laugh at it, be thankful no one got hurt or killed, and life goes on. I mean, life is too short. When you look at people who have more physical problems than I do, you're very thankful to whatever supreme being that you believe in, and that's what you have to do. Every morning, be thankful for what you have, your parents, where you're living, your health, and that's the main important thing too. Without your health, you have nothing. So you've got to stay healthy, and you'll be wealthy and very wise. But if you start drinking too much or smoking too much or eating too much, it's not going to work, because your mind has got to be working like a machine. And if you make it work like a machine by staying healthy and doing all those things, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I will say that one thing that my sisters and I always laugh about is our dad took us to a lot of his real estate properties and helped gut the place, remodel, remove junk or whatever. And that should be a whole nother episode, because there are stories after stories about events and family issues that arose because of these buildings. Funny when you look back on, but in the moment you get kind of mad and pissed off. But hey, that's the real estate game. Isn't that true?
You're right, Jake, and that's what life is all about. You have to have the shittiest jobs to... Can I say that shitty?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can now, yeah.
Okay, well, okay. You have to have the crummiest jobs to appreciate what you have, and that's what I wanted you kids to realize, that just because your father owned the real estate doesn't mean you guys can sit back and say, oh, well, Dad, I need this and I need that. And I have instilled upon you guys that when you were growing up, you weren't going to get any favors from me. If you wanted something to buy or get, you had to work for it. And even when your sisters were young, we bought that one antique store in Milwaukee, and they came out to work with me one day, and I told them to go into the window wells. And for some of you people who don't know what a window well is when you have a basement in colder parts of the country or even the world, people use those window wells to bring light into the basement. And this antique store used to be an old shoe store. So they would package all the shoes back in the late 1800s in the basement, and that's why the window wells were about 6 to 8 feet deep. So they were so small because I had Jake's two sisters who were older than him, Jill and Julie. They'd come with me one day, and I said, okay, girls, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to drop you into these holes and start picking up the garbage, and you fill up the buckets, and Dad will take it to the dumpster. Well, after the first 2 inches of the old leaves and junk that was there, it started to smell like sewer gas. And Julie and Jill would say, oh, Dad, you gotta get me out of here. The place stinks. I said, well, just remember this and when you get older, because if you don't want to learn anything in school, this is what you'll be doing for the rest of your life. And they all started laughing. Well, fast forward maybe 5-10 years later, I called home one day from working and talked to Jake's mother. I said, how are the girls doing in school? Very good, but Jill's having a pretty tough time of her math. And, Greg, she knows that. She said, if I don't study this math, I'm going to be working for Dad and picking up all of his garbage, and I don't want to do that. Now, we can laugh about it now, but at that time, and now she's doing quite well as a banking executive working in the wealth management department in one of the local banks in Milwaukee. Well, I should say not local, it's a nationwide bank, but those things, and same thing with Julie and Jake, they've all had their little difficulties with me.
Yeah, to interrupt, because I guess we are going to start the the real estate stories. So there was one time in third grade, I remember it was like parent night, and I brought them to school, and I was all like proud because I organized at my desk. Remember when you were in grade school and organizing your desk was like a big deal, So my dad was walking around the room, and in the corner, do you remember this? In the corner of the chalkboard was 10 words, and every week we had a 10-word spelling bee every Friday. Was it Friday or Monday? Well, whatever. And my dad looks at me and goes, what are those words doing up there in the corner? And I just told him that they were just words of the week. I was never really good academically. I wasn't a good speller, wasn't a good reader. So of course I didn't want to tell him that I have a spelling test tomorrow, which would be Friday. So my dad goes up to the teacher and asks the teacher, what's up with these words? And she goes, oh, every week, Mr. Naraka, we have a spelling bee. And my dad's eyes blew open, and he looked directly at me, and I knew I was in the doghouse. So sure enough, on the way home, we stop at one of his kind of not so good real estate properties on the more of the poorer areas of the city. And he told me that I had to pick up all the garbage surrounding one of his dumpsters. Now, mind you, it's about 5:30 at night. It was probably in the fall, so the sun was setting really early. And he said, I'll pick you up in a couple hours. He dropped me off back there. He jumped in his truck and he drove off. And now I'm back there. I'm in third grade. I have to pick up all this garbage around the dumpster by myself. All these people were starting to walk on out and ask me questions and all this stuff. Talk about freaking out in a good way and getting back on track. So if you parents out there have a kid that's acting out, maybe have him do some community service in a not so desired neighborhood, and that will put him on the straight and narrow. So do you remember that?
Now I do, yes, correct. Yeah. And look what happened to you, okay? 20-some years later.
Yeah, now I'm running the ship, so now I'm interviewing you. Exactly. So speaking of like kids and the stories and understanding, you got to work hard to get things. I think that model worked out quite well. You raised 3 successful children. Do you have any tips? Obviously, a lot of people know that I just had a baby boy recently. I would like him to turn out quite well. For all the new parents or existing parents out there, do you have any suggestions to raise a positive, self-confident child in this day and age?
Well, I don't know if I'm an expert, but from what I have done with you 3 kids, is that I've always told you about PMA, positive mental attitude.
SUS.
Yeah, SUS, stand up straight, winners never quit, quitters never win, Tough times never last. Tough people do.
Now tell the people where those last two quotes, where are they located at your house?
Tough times never last. Tough people. Well, that's my license plate number. That's my abbreviation. And winners never quit. Quitters never win. That's on your mother's car. So we have a lot of people who can't understand what it is, but when they figure it out, they're really impressed with it. And I think for all you people out there that are raising kids, or even yourself, put these little positive information quotes on your bathroom mirror. Here's one that I always thought was pretty good. You are what you think. You become what you think. What you think becomes reality. And I read that once in a Men's Health magazine where this kid said that his mom and dad put that on his mirror and he couldn't understand what it was until he started going to school, and really thought that if you keep thinking positive and you get your kids that way, or even yourself, no one's going to stop you. But it's the soothsayers that say, "Oh, that sounds stupid. That's really ridiculous." There's nothing that you can stop. There's nothing that will stop your family if you keep on telling them that they are the best. If they fail at something, and it's good to fail because that makes them realize that, hey, I can figure this out. And I'll tell you a little story about my son Jake. When he was about, I think, in 4th or 5th grade, they had to make a science project. Do you remember this?
Oh, Jesus,
okay.
No.
Well, the project was you had to make a styrofoam, or not a styrofoam, a paper mache
animal,
and not an animal, an insect.
Insect, yeah.
For science class. So, Jake said, "Well, you help me, Dad." I said, "Well, okay, fine, we'll go." We went to the local hardware store, got some chicken wire, got him a couple of pliers and a snipping pair of tweezers, and we went down into the basement, and he starts molding something. He said, "Well, aren't you going to help me, Dad?" I said, "Yeah, I went and bought you those items. Now it's up to you." He said, Jake starts crying.
I was never a crier. That's a lie.
And then all of a sudden, then his mother comes down. "What's going on?" I said, "Jake's got to make this thing." And Jake, of course, went to Mom, and my Dad's not going to help him. I said, "He'll be fine." Well, he made it. And the more he thought about it, he was successful. I think he got a B on it. And now, let me tell you, fellas and ladies, don't ever help your child. Let him fail. Well, he did a very good job, and I think he got a B on it. And what's sad about it, when you went to see this, and I think after this thing occurred, they had like an open house, and they had all these various insects hanging in the common hallway right around Jake's class. And you could actually tell who made them themselves and who had the parents make them, because they were very, very exquisite. They were looked like they should have been in a museum. And that's the sad part about the society. What's happening now with these kids, everything's being done for them. And I know these computers are great, but I've got grandkids that I'm trying to wean them away from all this technical stuff, because, it's very easy to tell someone through texting, "I don't like you," or "drop dead," or "you're nothing but a B word," or a goofball. No one wants to communicate. Nobody wants to talk face to face. And that's what I think is going to be wrong with the society, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. That is true. There's actually better stories than the one that he said, but that is a very true point. Working hard and failing. And one thing too that I realized from you, throughout sports, I've been very lucky to have a father that has provided me with some great activities in my life, and never once was he focused on, "Jake, you have to score. You have to do this. You have to complete that." He was always about the team atmosphere. He was understanding if I didn't win, if I lost, if I screwed up. He never brought the pressure on me. He always let me work through my own issues. He was always supportive, but he was never, pushy in trying to have me achieve certain goals when it came to athletics, because he understood that everybody has a little different knack and a different niche for each activity. And he decided to let me do that instead of be the father that was so pushy and almost make me hate him and or hate the sport. So for that, thank you. That was, as I look back on my life, that was really huge, because that actually makes me enjoy the sports more as opposed to hating them. Funny story, I actually still play hockey, but back in the day, I played hockey at a local ice arena, and I don't even know how old I was. But my father came to every game, and I played defense in hockey, and he would always yell, help that goalie," from the top of his lungs. Well, it was during playoff season or whatever. Playoffs when you're 6 years old is really just more just to make sure everybody gets a trophy at the end of the year. But he decided to bring in a garbage can lid and a stick, and he was standing there in the stands. Now, granted, again, we're 6 years old. All the people that are in the stands are parents. It's not like there's random fans, pouring in because they want to see, 6-year-old play hockey at like 8:00 in the morning on a Saturday. So my dad's standing there, the top row, banging this garbage can lid. Help that goalie! Help that goalie! And I remember even the refs had to stop the game. They had to get the manager of the ice arena to go talk to my dad. And then all his kids were like, what's going on? Why did they stop the game? And then coach is like, oh, there's some crazy guy up there banging on a garbage can lid, so they have to stop to make, and they have to make sure that he'll give up the lid before they let the game go on. And I remember turning around and looking up, and everybody's like looking at my dad, and he's like arguing with the manager. And I was like, Jesus, yeah, that's my dad. But he's always been really supportive, and that's one thing I hope to carry on is just be really supportive and loving throughout my kids' life. And for you guys out there, make sure you share that with your kids too.
If I can make one more statement about this hockey situation, a lot of folks don't realize that there's not enough ice rinks in the Milwaukee area to play. So when Jake was going to play hockey in high school, the ice time started at, I think, 5 o'clock in the morning. So we'd have to leave our house probably 4:45, 4:30 to get to the rink. And it was, it wasn't bad come the early spring, but when it's wintertime and it's, 10 below zero, we're getting in the truck and I stop and get Jake's partner or one of his teammates who lived down the street from us. I had an old blue van and I said, just think, guys, a couple of years from now when you're going into high school, you can have this blue van, take it to class and really have fun with it. Put an old couch in the back, maybe a little table, blah, blah, blah. They started laughing, but I said, I have to really compliment you fellas because while you guys are out here practicing for hockey, there's other people in your class who are sitting home sleeping and enjoying the nice warm bed. And what you guys are doing right now is going to set a precedence for what you guys want to become in your future endeavors. Because here you are busting your butt, getting up early, playing hockey, practicing, going to school, getting out of school, doing your homework, practicing at night sometimes, and getting up again during the day. And then on Friday nights, we'd be traveling up to northern Wisconsin to play teams or other classes or other schools in the Milwaukee area. But it gave me a good reason to show you guys that it might be tough. And when it is tough and you say, oh, man, this is nothing compared to hockey, that's what I wanted to instill in you guys because it gives you an idea that, boy, if I can play hockey at 4 o'clock in the morning, no matter what I'm doing now, this is nothing. So I think that's what's made Jake become a success and some of his partners that played hockey with him. Because if you look at the guys that didn't have any organized sport, they're sort of like still wandering around the world or in the city thinking what I should or could have done. So
take that for what it's worth. Again, this is about you guys, but it is a Father's Day special, so we will be going on little rants about personal stories. But a funny thing about this old blue van, my grandfather bought that on my mom's side. My grandfather on my mom's side bought that way back in the day, and he actually drove that down to Mexico for one of their trips. So this van has been around the block numerous times. But the funniest thing is, having a father as a landlord, or what my sister and I like to call him a slumlord, is a joke. There'd be times that he would put lawnmowers, trimmers, chainsaws in the back of that truck, and it would spill over, and there'd be gasoline just smelling like, if you lit up a cigarette in that blue van, literally that thing would blow up. So what did my dad do to counteract the smell of gasoline inside of the cab of that blue truck? He poured like a gallon of vinegar on top of it. So if that wasn't, so you got this rank smell of gas, like, Jesus, I'm all high now. And then you got this potent stinging of the eyes and nostrils of vinegar. But hey, you know what? He toughened us up for sure. So that was funny. But okay, getting back to kind of mindset and trying to transform our lives. If somebody came up to you today, and you know what, a little side note, my father also has, do you mind telling the people what you have on your voice message?
I can't think of
Okay, well, basically, summary is tough times never last, tough people do. God bless America. Thank you. Make it a great day. You are what you think. Kind of like this is inspiring message. And how many people would you say have given you crap for that message throughout the years?
Oh, there's got to be hundreds of them. But, after they say it, you say, but I really like your message. I know it sounds goofy, they say, but every time I hear it, I really like your message. So and I think that's another thing when you have, don't be like everybody else. Hi, this is the Smith residence or Jones residence. Please leave a message. Always give them something to talk about, whether you want to talk about farming or whatever, or like I did. I'm very happy to be in America, and I think, I don't know, wherever you folks are listening, it's a great country. We've got difficulties just like every country has, but be thankful for what you have and never, ever forget where you came from. That's what I told my kids, and every time we go by where my father or Jake's grandfather grew up, or both grandparents grew up, let them know that what we have now is from what they did, or our nationality is Polish, and my great-great-grandparents came from Poland, and it took a lot of strength and initiative and fortitude to leave your homeland and come to a place that you didn't know squat about nothing and couldn't even speak the language. And it's always been impressive upon me that you thank those people every night before you go to bed and say, hey, I'm very thankful for what you've done for us. And there's some people just don't want to do anything. I mean, you might listen to this broadcast and say, oh, it's a bunch of garbage. But you know what? If you get one thing out of anything I've learned in my life, whether it's reading a book, listening to this, listening to someone speak, and it's going to set in your mind as to what you want to do, you can do it. You put your mind to it, nothing can stop you.
Yeah, that's very true. My father would always tell me, oh, you got to read this book or read about this guy. He did whatever. I can't think of a specific book off the top of my head, but I would be like, Dad, why the hell do I care about this guy's life? He's dead. He has nothing to add value to, and also I have my own life to live. Why the hell am I reading about somebody else's life when I can be living my own? And he said exactly what he just stated. If you can gain 10% out of that book to implement into your own personal life, they'll just really speed up the learning curve. So that is huge. So I continue to read, and also too, one thing I can say that I plan to do for my child in the upcoming years. My father, like he said, read a lot of books. He also keeps this little pamphlet that's sent once a month. It's called Bits and Pieces, and it's about inspirational stories, motivating tips, quotes, all that kind of fun stuff. And if you keep that stuff around your house, if you keep stuff that you want your kid to turn into or believe in or understand, they will catch on. And even though you don't think they're looking at it, that's why I turned out the way I did, because that stuff was laid around our house all the time. And I pick it up and I would read it and I would look at it, and it really brought me to the person I am today. So for that, again, Greg, thank you very much. And in summary, so you got to dance around that subject about if somebody came up to you and they wanted to change their life. We got sidetracked on your inspirational voice message, which is very good. But no, in all honesty, if somebody comes up to you and you are a person to tell people if they're smoking to quit, if they're a drinker to quit, and you're very honest and very truthful to a lot of people out there, and which is very good because you're not a sugarcoater. You are a cop, you were a ex-Marine, you're a guy that likes to get in people's faces and tell them, what's wrong with them, which is good or bad, however you want to look at it. But for the most part, I would say it's good because you are trying to change people's lives. And if somebody did come up to you and said, Greg, I'm struggling right now, and you don't know his backstory, what's one direction you could point them in?
Well, I think, I was just thinking about while you were talking there, Jake, it's called that 10,000-hour rule. No matter what you do in life, and I still remember this story about Tiger Woods, who we all think, I know, is probably one of the best golfers in the world. They said that he used to go to Stanford, or was a Stanford graduate, and after a golf outing, he came back to the school, and it was raining out there. And all the golf guys that were on his team went into the, campus dormitory, and started studying. All of a sudden, he looked out, and here's Tiger Woods hitting golf balls in the rain. He's got his rain suit on, and one of the guys says, hey, Tiger, come on in. He says, nope. He said, well, what do you mean, no? He says, well, there's some times when I'm going to be out there playing in the rain, and I got to practice in the rain. And I think that was one thing that I've thought about all these things. If you look at all the successful people, it's 10,000 hours of playing baseball or football or working in a factory and making something special, or Papa John's Pizza, or Steve Jobs. There's a good book you guys should read about Steve Jobs. I don't know if you folks know this, but Steve Jobs' mother was originally from Manitowoc, Wisconsin. She grew up on a farm, went to UW Wisconsin at Madison, she wanted to become a teacher. She fell in love with some guy from, I think it was Jordan, who was there on a scholarship to learn mechanical engineering. They fell in love. She went back to Manitowoc to introduce him to the father, or her father, and he says, "Hey, I don't want you marrying this guy. You do what you want, but I can see there's going to be a problem." Well, she got pregnant. She wanted to go back, so she went to California. She had the baby there. Well, Steve Jobs' stepfather, or adoptive father, I should say, grew up in a farm in Kenosha, which is another county of Wisconsin, and he went out to California during World War II, and he was on the U.S. Coast Guard couple of ships. And after the war, he started living in the California area, met this woman, got married. She couldn't have kids, but he was always a tinkerer. So when Steve Jobs' mother had the baby, she gave it up to this doctor, and the doctor said, "I have a nice family that should take care of this son for you." And she said, "I want my son to have a college-educated husband and wife." And the doctor says, "Well, I think this guy is better." The stepfather, it was going to be a person than your college-educated people. So she finally agreed to it, and she also wanted to say that the way I will agree with it is that when he gets to college age, Steve will be able to get his degree. Well, they adopted him, and the rest is history. And Steve Jobs, even in his book, and if you have any inspiration, read that book, and it'll show you how this gentleman who hung around with his father, who went to these swap meets at times, he'd buy used parts for a car, fix the car up, sell it, reinvest the money and buy another car. And Steve Jobs would go around with him and show that he said, and one thing I was impressed upon is his father said, if you're going to build a car, make sure everything is perfect, even under the hood. Or if you're going to build a cabinet, make sure the wood in the front of the cabinet is as good as the back of the cabinet. And I still remember one of the stories in the book about Steve Jobs, how nitpicker he was. One of the people was showing him how they built a computer, and they took the back of the computer off. And Steve Jobs says, "Why did you change my plans? I wanted this titanium screw, which was a special screw on the back of this computer." He said, "Mr. Steve," he said, "we're saving like $15,000 by not using these screws." He says, "I don't care. My name is on that computer, and I want it to be my way." And I think that's one thing that you guys should realize too, is that when you do something, you do it right. And if your name's on it, be proud of it.
Yeah, perfect. And that is the Cliff Note version, audio book by Greg Naraki on Steve Jobs.
Well, I know, guys, I could talk forever on it because it was a very good book. And if you have a chance, that would be one of the books to read. And here's another one I always would recommend. It's a book called Die Broke. And people laugh about it, but I always tell them the story because it shows you how to invest your money, what kind of insurance you should buy to make sure that you have enough money for your family's protection. That's another big thing. I even told my son Jake and my daughters that when you do have children, take out as much money as you possibly can on a term insurance policy. One of the things I always laugh about in the book, the gentleman who wrote the book, can't think of his name, he said, when you're passing from this world, always write a check to the undertaker and it should bounce, which means that you have no money. You give the money away to all your kids or whoever you wanted to give away because you can't take it with you. And here's another thing too. If your children or children need help while they're growing up, help them. Make sure that, if you never had any help, and I didn't have that much help, but help them succeed, become more successful than you are. But if you see that they're, wasting the money, well, then stop it. But if they need something now, don't forget, well, you can say, oh, you're going to get this inheritance when you're 65 or 70 years old. They don't need the money now. They need the money when they're growing up, having a family, helping them through some tough times. And we all have had tough times. And just be thankful for what you have and spread the wealth. That's what I would tell anybody that approached me. So,
for sure, that is perfect advice and something that you have always preached to us.
So, you guys, that's why I had to get Greg Naraki, my father, on the podcast because he is Mr. Motivation, always positive, and always has a story to share with you. So, again, Dad, thanks for joining us. But in closing here, I made publicly on podcast number 1, and kind of the inspiration for starting this podcast was to help people that were in a bad place. The reason why I started was because I was filing bankruptcy. I had a child on the way. I knew that I needed to do something that would bring me to a better state of mind, and that is why I started the podcast. And so far, I mean, the responses back from the people out there listening has been remarkable. I mean, the emails and the reviews from you guys has just been inspiring, and I really do appreciate that. But I want to ask you, Dad, when was your kind of most difficult moment and time of really questioning if you made the right decisions in your life?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Jake, because as you know, I had to file bankruptcy in 1990. I didn't want to, but quite a few of the tenants just for some reason weren't paying the rent, and the banks were, hounding me for money, and I couldn't come up with it at the time. So I had a few avenues to check out, and spoke with quite a few attorneys and say, this is the way to go. And you really feel that you failed, and that the whole ship was sinking, and people were looking at you strange, and, oh, you can't, how could you file for bankruptcy? We told you never got into real estate. And I thought, boy, I really felt bad. But then talking to the attorneys, they said, Greg, listen, you know how many people are filing bankruptcy every year? It's not just you. Large corporations, Dow Chemical, and I think quite a few things back in the 90s were filing bankruptcy. And these are multi-billion-dollar companies. And then just recently, if you think of, look at GM went under. Now, that's another thing that really upsets me. They really went under, but we bailed them out. Or same thing with the banks. Now, I failed, and I'm better for it because I worked my way through it. But here the federal government came and helped these people out, which I think was wrong, because at least when you fail with something, you start over. Here they're borrowing money from all of us when there was nobody basically I could borrow money from. But I got through with it. It took about 3 months to really get out of the funk of being, and what's funny too is that, all my relatives knew what I did, and they weren't risk takers. So I'm thinking I should listen to these people, and they're going to say, well, you shouldn't have done this and done that. But I'm the one who has now bounced back. I'm doing okay. We're doing great in some respects. Life goes on. And if you do fail, that's okay. I mean, what they always say, you fall off a bike, get up. You have some type of situation where you lose a lot of things, but you know what? Came back stronger, got rid of the crappy investments that I thought could turn around, but people just didn't like what was going on. And I've got the same bankers that I had 25, 30 years ago. They appreciate what I've done. I've never scurried around or ran away from things. Always looked it in the eye and say, I'm tougher than this, and I will get through with this. And that's, I guess, the mindset you have to have. And don't worry about what other people think. You keep telling yourself, I'm the best person around. You look in that mirror every morning. I'm the best looking guy or girl in this city or country or wherever it is. And don't take shit from nobody. You laugh in their face when they tell you that you failed and say, yeah, I failed, but I'm doing okay. And I think that's what's wrong with a lot of people in this world that, are upset because they failed. It's okay. Look at Steve Jobs. There's a perfect example of how things went bad for him, and he fought back. A lot of people like him, and same thing with Donald Trump. Donald Trump was filing bankruptcy back, or maybe I don't know if it's bankruptcy or reorganization back in the late 70s or early 80s, and look at him now. So there's people out there that have been through a lot worse than I have, and we're all still fighting. We're above ground, and like I said, the best thing that you can do is, in my mind, is to feel confident about your health, your looks, the stuff you eat, and being involved in things and having a great family life. And whoever you believe in, pray to that person every night and thank them that before you go to bed. And the first thing you do is wake up in the morning and tell yourself that you're going to be helpful to some people and really appreciate life. Life is too short. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah, one thing you always talk about too is being self-confident and believing that you are the best person, the best looking, the best, motivation, the best inspiring person you can be. And some people might think, oh, you're cocky, you're full of yourself or whatever. But if you're not happy with yourself, then what's the point? You're not going to have that self-confidence within to propel you to take those risks, to laugh in the people's faces and to tell them that, you know what, I took the chance, you didn't, I'm living my life, you should start living yours. So another great inspirational tip by Greg Naraki. Anything that you want to leave the people, because we're coming up on an hour here, anything you want to leave the people listening, because this could be your last chance, Dad, on the podcast. So really just let the people know what you're all about and what you believe in.
Well, I think I was just thinking about it as you were talking that I've been on a lot of rafting trips, and when you go to different parts of this United States, or we've been on a lot of tours, and I saw a lot of places when I was in the Marine Corps overseas, and you see different walks of life, and be thankful for what you have, not what you don't have. And there's a couple of times when I went on that first rafting trip where I almost drowned, and as I'm sinking underneath the river, I'm thinking, boy, I hope they find my body so my friend Dan can sue the rafting company so my family can get some restitution. But I think the other thing is, too, you have to go out and enjoy life, whether it's rafting, bicycle trips, shooting. You got to take a break. And when you are with people with a like mindset who enjoy adventure, climbing mountains, going in goofy places that you've never been before. And the other thing is, too, don't be afraid to ask people questions. That's where I think a lot of these people in this United States, and look them in the eye. Don't look at the ground when you're talking or look away. You focus on what they are, be interested in them. And even the wealthy people, if you come up to them and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I just want to pick your brain. They're more than happy because they want that acknowledgement that you give them. And don't be cocky. Just enjoy life. That's basically what I've told you kids. And that's why I still feel the dying for my last breath, I'm going to enjoy life as much as I possibly can. Because life is too short.
Damn right. Well, Greg, I appreciate your time coming on the podcast. I know this is all new and exciting for you, and you finally have a platform to speak your true self, and I think you accomplished that today. So,
well, thanks, Jake. And if I can say the last thing is, like I says on the answering machine, thanks for calling. God bless America. Have a great time. Enjoy life, and keep on hustling.
Perfect. Thanks again, Dad. Happy Father's Day and many more.
Well, Jake, and thank you for asking me. This is the best happy Father's Day I've ever had in my life, and I enjoyed it. And I hope you folks did too. Thanks for listening to us, and maybe we'll talk again.
So there you guys go. A little insight in my life, a little insight about my father, Greg Naraki. Dad, thanks again for coming on the podcast. I don't even know if you're going to be able to listen to this someday, but either way, it's documented. And I think the people out there listening got some great information from your life story and just the way that you live your life day in and day out. Thank you so much again. And guys, what do you think about this interview? Do you think my dad nailed it out of the park? I would love to hear some feedback from you guys. Feel free to go to the website, operationselfreset.com/podcast 007. There you'll find all of the show notes, the links, the books my dad talked about, and also to the 7 tips that I pulled away from this interview. Even though he's my father, I still learned a couple of things from him. So it was great to really dive in and understand his mindset and how he ticks. Well, guys, we are coming up on an hour here, and today is Father's Day. And I would hope and suggest that you guys can reach on out to your fathers. Give him a call. Let him know that you love him. Let him know that you appreciate him. And even if you had a bad relationship with him, maybe it's time to rebuild that bridge, because life is too short. Life is too valuable to always be just pissed off, So today's a good start, and hopefully you can reach on out to your father and just tell him, you know what, happy Father's Day, thanks for bringing me on this earth. If nothing else, just thank him for giving you the opportunity to strive for your best day in and day out when it comes to being a part of this great world. So guys, again, thank you so much for the reviews on iTunes. Just remarkable. The emails I've been getting from you guys, again, just so inspiring. I hope to continue to bring you some great information in the podcast to follow. Happy Father's Day. Make it a great day. This is your life. Live for the moment and enjoy it. See you in the next episode, guys. Later.